Meet the author. Elizabeth Lasleben is a world traveler. She was born in Montana, grew up in Kenya, and now lives in Egypt. Her international experiences inspired her to share stories about African and Arab culture. When she isn't busy writing, she travels across the desert.
The Bedouin of the Middle East.
Who are the Bedouin?
The Bedouin are an ancient Arab people. They live mainly in the Arabian and Syrian deserts, the Sinai Peninsula of Egypt, and the Sahara Desert of North Africa. There are Bedouin communities in North Africa. Altogether, the Bedouin population numbers about 4 million. The Bedouins share their lands with other cultural and religious groups. Like many people in the Middle East and North Africa, the Bedouin are Arabs. They speak the Arabic language and practice the Islamic religion.
Desert dwellers.
The name Bedouin comes from the Arabic Badawi, which means desert dweller. The Bedouin are traditionally nomads. They live in tents and move from place to place in the desert, looking for food and water for their herds of camels, sheep, and goats. The Bedouin are very proud of their culture and traditions. They have preserved their way of life for thousands of years. In the late 1300s, an Arab historian named Ibn Khaldun called the Bedouin the strongest of all the people he met during his travels in the Middle East and North Africa. The Bedouin had the skills to survive in the desert and were very loyal to one another. These traits made their communities tight-knit and helped them keep their traditions alive. Present-day Bedouin nomads still have strong tribal ties. The desert landscape.
The deserts of North Africa and the Middle East make up the largest area of dry land in the world. It rains only a few days a year in these deserts, and farming is almost impossible. In the heart of the Rub al-Khali, or the Empty Quarter, part of the southern Arabian desert, no living thing can stay alive for long. In ancient times, most people settled near rivers, such as the Nile in Egypt and the Tigris and Euphrates in Iraq. But the Bedouin preferred to live in the open desert.
More than sand.
Rocks in the Sinai and northern Sahara can tell us about the history of these deserts. Scientists have found fossils of prehistoric sea creatures in the rocks. This evidence suggests that the deserts were once under the sea. Over millions of years, the sea dried up. The fossils of sea creatures remained preserved under layers of rock and sand.
Folds in desert rocks contain clues to the land's past. Canyons.
After the sea dried up, forests and fertile grasslands covered the land. But then the climate changed. It started to rain less and less. The rivers slowly dried up, and the forests and grasslands became deserts. River valleys turned into dry canyons, called wadis.
Floods in dry weather.
The desert is dry almost all year long. Rain finally falls in spring, in heavy storms that flood the wadis with rushing water. The floods can uproot trees and large rocks and make travel dangerous. Temperatures in the desert change from season to season. Winter temperatures average around 61 degrees Fahrenheit, 16 degrees Celsius, but summer temperatures can rise as high as 129 degrees Fahrenheit, 54 degrees Celsius.
Desert winds whip the dry sand into spectacular dunes.
Precious water.
Water is very precious in the desert because there is so little of it. The Arabian and Sahara deserts receive only a few inches of rain a year. Bedouin life revolves around searching for water for the family and animals to drink. Carrying water from a source to camp takes a lot of time and hard work. In the last 2 decades, the weather has been getting hotter and drier in Bedouin territory, making it even harder to find water.
Mountain pools.
The Bedouin look for water in many different places. The best source is a nagat, or dripping place, found deep in the mountains. Mountain pools form when rain or dew drips down rocks and cliffs and collects in small shady crevices. Passing Bedouin can enjoy the cool water in the rocky shade, together with birds and other animals that come to the nagat to drink and rest.
Hard to imagine, but waterfalls do flow in the desert. Water under the ground.
Desert rain may also trickle down into the ground and fill up underground spaces. Water found in pools beneath the sand is called shiriya. Bedouin find the hidden pools by digging under the sand. In some places, fresh water may be found deeper underground. Bedouin dig wells to reach these deep pockets of water.
Oasis Springs.
Oases are fertile places in the desert. They contain freshwater springs called Ain that never run dry. Dates, figs, and other desert fruits grow here. Traveling Bedouin often stop at oases to rest by the cool water.
Oasis Springs are a constant source of water in the desert.
Plants in the desert.
Although water is scarce in the desert, many plants manage to survive there. Tough shrubs grow in deep cracks on mountain slopes and on rocky plains. Large bushes grow in sandy areas. When it rains, grass grows up through the sand. Wadis have the richest plant life, including bushes, shrubs, and trees, such as the yellow-flowered acacia. After spring rains, wadis fill with the vibrant colors of purple iris, red bladderdock, and other flowers. Bedouin use many desert plants to make food, medicine, and tools.
Plants for food.
Many desert plants, including figs, bladderdock leaves, and capers, make delicious foods. Date palms grow in oases throughout the year. Dates are very sweet and highly nutritious. They can be eaten straight from the tree or used to make pastries and other foods. Bedouin use date juice to add flavor to bread. Roasted date seeds make a tasty snack.
The desert blooms in spring. Birds and bees help to pollinate the flowers of many plants. Medicinal plants.
The Bedouin also use desert plants to cure common illnesses and to keep healthy. Certain roots, herbs, and flowers help relieve rashes, headaches, and stomach aches. Dried sage leaves can be made into a relaxing tea. The Bedouin also burn sage leaves to repel snakes, scorpions, and other dangerous creatures. The forget-me-not, a kind of flower, is boiled in water and used as a mouthwash to heal sore gums.
Other useful plants.
Bedouin nomads live far from stores, so they cannot easily buy the things they need. Instead, they use plants to make useful items. They hollow out the thick branches of the yasar tree to make storage containers. They use the bark of the acacia tree to make dye for clothing. And they use the acacia tree's branches to make sturdy tent poles. Jebeliya Bedouin carve eating utensils from acacia wood. The Bedouin also stack bushes together to shield their tents from strong winds and the cold night air.
Jewels of the desert.
The date palm is a very valuable plant. Every part of the tree can be used. The trunk provides wood for building houses and fences. The fruit stalks can be burned as fuel. The leaves can be made into sandals, baskets, and rope. Of course, the fruit of the date palm, ripe, is great to eat. Saudi Arabia has more than 1 million date palms. In the city of Al-Madinah, date palms line the streets and avenues. Morocco, Algeria, Libya, Egypt, and Iraq are also big date producers. The dates are exported to countries around the world. Desert wildlife.
Many animals thrive in the desert, even though food and water are hard to find. The Bedouin respect animals. They do not kill animals unless they need food. Some Bedouin work as rangers in the St. Catherine Protectorate, a nature preserve in the Sinai. The Bedouin can help protect the animals there since they know the area very well.
Gazelles have long ringed horns that curve slightly and taper at the top. Dangers in the sand.
Poisonous insects and reptiles lie beneath the silent desert sands. These animals can camouflage or disguise themselves, but the Bedouin know how to recognize them and can usually avoid being bitten. Sand vipers often hide near Bedouin camps or under dry firewood. Their bites can kill people. Traditional Bedouin healers treat snake bites, spider bites, and scorpion stings by reciting prayers and breathing or spitting over the wounds.
Flocks in the sky.
Millions of birds fly over the deserts of the Middle East on their way south to Africa for the winter and north again to Europe for the summer. In recent years, many birds have become endangered. Tourists, farmers, and hunters have disturbed nests, destroyed breeding grounds, and killed many birds. But other people are trying to protect endangered birds. They have created parks and preserves, tracked birds to learn more about their habits, and set up breeding programs to increase bird populations. Many Bedouin are involved in these protection efforts.
The fish eagle perches in high places to spot fish in the Red Sea. Other desert animals.
Many small animals live in Bedouin territory. The ibex, a wild goat, lives high in the mountains. It is known for running fast over cliff tops. The oryx is a graceful antelope with long, thin horns. It stands about 40 inches, 1 meter tall, with a black coat and white bands on its legs. Gazelles live on the plains and lower mountain slopes. The Bedouins sometimes tame them to keep as pets. Wolves, geckos, hedgehogs, and hares also live in the desert. Leopards, hyenas, and foxes are becoming endangered species as people destroy their natural habitats. The Ancient Bedouin.
Bedouin history dates to ancient times. The ancient Egyptians wrote about encounters with Sinai Bedouin, who raided their caravans and fought with them in a number of battles. Records of these wars date to 3000 BC. The Egyptians mined turquoise in the western Sinai. They built walls around the mines as a defense against Bedouin attacks. Other ancient groups, such as the Mesopotamians and Phoenicians, probably encountered the Bedouin on trade routes between Egypt and their own cities.
The Abu Simbel temples, carved into solid rock near the Egyptian border with Sudan, were built around 1250 BC for the pharaoh Ramses II. 4 large statues of the pharaoh, each 65 feet, 20 meters tall, sit outside the front of the main temple. In the middle is a doorway leading into a huge hall whose walls show scenes of ancient wars. The early Bedouin kept their independence throughout the Roman era, often fighting rival tribes. Meeting the Romans.
The ancient Romans once ruled much of Europe, including present-day Spain, Portugal, France, Italy, and Greece. They also ruled the northern coast of Africa. By about AD 100, the Roman Empire extended far into the deserts of North Africa and the Middle East. Roman soldiers crossing the Syrian and Sinai deserts often came across Bedouin nomads who traveled these areas.
Ancient jewelry.
The jewelry that present-day Bedouin wear has ancient origins. From early times, Bedouin used little pieces of gold and silver to make raised patterns on bracelets and necklaces. They twisted pieces of gold and silver wire into cords. They learned these techniques from the Egyptians. They also made jewelry using Phoenician materials, such as colorful glass beads. Guides in the desert.
Traveling through the desert was difficult and dangerous. Paths in the sand were hard to follow, and people sometimes lost their way in fierce sandstorms. Islamic traders depended on the Bedouin to help them through the desert. The Bedouin knew a lot about travel routes, tribal territories, and desert life, so they made good guides. Islamic merchants traded grain, gold, copper, leather goods, textiles, and perfumes with countries near and far.
Traditional Bedouin life.
Traditional Bedouin life is centered around animals. The Bedouin moved to find water and good pasture land for their herds of camels, sheep, and goats. The Bedouin traditionally made, gathered, or traded for everything they needed. They got milk, meat, leather, and fur from the animals they herded. They still get much of what they need from the land and animals, but they sometimes sell animals and crafts for money. They then visit villages to buy things like flour, sugar, and cooking pots.
Caring for the herds.
Bedouin women take care of the sheep and goats. They sometimes must walk the animals high into the mountains to find water and grass for grazing. The herd might contain hundreds of sheep and goats, and the women must make sure that no animal gets lost or is attacked by a predator. Bedouin men are responsible for the camel herds. Sometimes they have to travel far into the desert to find enough pasture and water for the animals. When they are away from camp, men sleep around a fire under the stars. A boy becomes a man when he is old enough to travel with his father to herd the family's camels.
Moving the camp.
Bedouin traditionally relied on camels to carry their tents and other belongings to new campsites whenever the clan moved. In recent years, many roads have been built through the deserts of the Middle East and North Africa. Many modern Bedouin load their belongings, animals, and even camels onto small trucks and jeeps. They drive wherever they need to go, even deep into the mountains and valleys. Camels have always been a symbol of wealth for the Bedouin, but in modern times, trucks are a sign of wealth too.
Ships of the desert.
The camel is very useful to Bedouin in the desert. It provides wool, meat, and milk. The Bedouin also use camels for transportation. Because camels can transport heavy loads over long distances, they are often called ships of the desert. Camels are well suited to life in the desert. They store fat in humps on their backs, so they can go without food or water for days. Special flaps shield their noses from blowing desert sand.
A Bedouin herds camels using a truck.
Modern Bedouin life.
Many present-day Bedouin have become semi-nomadic. They stay in one village for a long time before moving on to another place. Other Bedouin have settled permanently in towns and cities. Bedouin who have settled in towns and cities often live far from their tribes. They have had to find new ways to make a living, but they still value their traditions and are eager to teach foreigners about their culture.
The tourist trade.
Tourists from around the world travel to the Middle East to learn about ancient cultures and to enjoy the beauty of the desert. In Jordan, Petra and Wadi Rum are popular tourist attractions. Petra is an ancient city carved from rock. Wadi Rum is a moon-like stretch of desert with sandstone mountains. Some Bedouin who live near these sites take tourists on desert safaris. Tourists can ride camels or jeeps through the sand and sleep under Bedouin tents at night. Other Bedouin work at hotels and restaurants in tourist areas. They send some of the money they earn to their families in the desert. Unfortunately, due to war and economic problems, The number of tourists in the Middle East has fallen in the last 2 decades.
Becoming farmers.
With the development of towns and cities, the Bedouin are not always able to roam freely with their animals. Some families have turned to farming as a new way to make a living. They have settled in villages where they tend small gardens of potatoes, tomatoes, and cucumbers. If the farmers have extra vegetables, they sell them in the village market.
Going to school.
Some Bedouin children attend school near their camps in the desert, but most schools are located in towns and cities, far from Bedouin camps. For many Bedouin children, going to school involves leaving their families. When children leave home to attend school, it becomes difficult for them to maintain their values and traditions. Bedouin families sometimes move their camps close to town so their children can attend school without giving up their traditional Bedouin lifestyle.
Discuss. 1. After reading The Bedouin of the Middle East, what can you infer about the Bedouin people? Support your answer with evidence from the text. 2. Using quotes from the text, describe the desert landscape.